said, I think we should see if we can have her come and do a presentation for us. So she started that ball rolling. So I want to thank Nancy very much for that. Ellen and I work for Investing in Quality Peterborough, which is the quality initiative for early learning and care in Peterborough City and County. So we always have the pleasure of hosting different professional learning opportunities such as this one today. So just some housekeeping things before we get started. If you hover on your screen, you will see that there is a camera. So I'd love for Linda to keep her camera on, and then anyone else who may be speaking, such as Nancy when she introduces her. But also keep your microphone off. That just really helps so that we don't have any background noise, you know, dogs barking, babies crying. And it just helps if some people are in the county and they're having trouble with bandwidth, it just really helps to keep everything running smoothly. There also, if you keep going over, you'll see a little comment box. And if you click on that, it should bring up a meeting chat on the right-hand side of your screen. So today we have kind of a facilitated conversation with Linda for about 40 minutes. And then the last 15 minutes, we will be taking questions. So throughout the conversation, if you have a question, write it in the chat and Ellen will note that for the question and answer period. At the end of the session, we have books that we have a draw for. We've actually already drawn the names just to keep time since we only have an hour. But I want to thank again the Old Millbrook Family Center EarlyON for donating those books. And it's Linda's book, There's No Such Thing as Bad Weather. So that's wonderful. And then just one other thing, that we are recording this session today, so that we did actually have quite a big wait list of people who couldn't get in. So we are hoping to be able to re-air the presentation again. So just be aware of that. So now I just wanted to introduce Nancy Hurley and hoping she can turn on her camera for a minute. She is the administrator from the Millbrook EarlyON Family Center, which is an EarlyON program in Millbrook, and she is going to introduce our speaker today. So
Thanks, Becky. Thanks so much. Thank you for introducing myself and getting us started. And to Ellen, thank you so much for your behind-the-scenes tech work. We appreciate that.
Yes.
Just before I introduce Linda, I just wanted to, if you're okay with this, take a moment to give a quick land acknowledgement. I know that a lot of us are coming from many, many different places right now, which is wonderful. The uptake on this session was wonderful, but we're based in Peterborough. So I just wanted to take a quick moment to respectfully acknowledge that we in Peterborough are on the traditional territory of the Mississauga Anishinaabe, and we offer our gratitude to the First Nations for their care, their teachings about the earth and our relations. May we honor those teachings. So thank you for that. So I'm super, super grateful to introduce Linda today to everyone, Linda McGurk. Linda is a journalist and the author of the book that we'll be talking about today, There's No Such Thing as Bad Weather, A Scandinavian Mom's Secret to Raising Healthy, Resilient, and Confident Children. It was published in 2017. Linda also offers a blog that you can find on Facebook entitled Rain or Shine Mama, which is a fantastic blog. I've been following it a lot. Linda's the mother of 2 children, 2 young girls, and she's had the opportunity to raise them both in the United States and in Sweden, where she is residing again permanently or full-time. Who knows if it's permanent. Linda and I started chatting about a month ago after I read her book. I'm really excited to have her here with us today to discuss the idea and the importance of unstructured outdoor play for children, and the idea that all of us, young and old, can gain so many wonderful benefits when we spend as much time as we can outside. So thank you so much for all of you being here today, and I'm just going to turn it back over to Becky.
Thank you for so much, Nancy. That was lovely. And thank you for all of your hard work in getting this organized again. So we can start now. Welcome, Linda. I just want to iterate what Nancy just said. We're thrilled to have you with us today. We were overwhelmed at the uptake of people that participated and registered for this session today. And I was hoping to start the session just by reading a passage from your book, if that's okay.
Sure. And it was so much for having me. I'm super excited to be joining you today.
Great. Thank you. I was really drawn into your book immediately with the line that started with, "I don't want to go outside. My 4-year-old daughter, Nora, is standing in the mudroom, heels dug into the floor, lips pouting and arms crossed in protest. Her sister, 7-year-old Maya, chimes in, 'Do we have to, Mummy?' They look like I just asked them to clean their rooms, or worse, offered them a bowl of fermented Brussels sprouts. I want to watch a movie instead. But there's fresh snow on the ground. Snow." So when I read that, it made me think about how we as educators and parents can all relate to this experience. And I know that you have lived in both the US and Sweden and have raised your children in both countries. So we're wondering if you could share with us what that experience has been like in comparison to your childhood, and just kind of the similarities and the differences of the cultures around outdoor play.
Right. Like you just said, I think a lot of people can relate to this sort of the struggle of getting kids to maybe appreciate outdoor play like we did when we were little. Of course, you know, the rise of electronics has been a huge game changer, not just in North America, but definitely here in Scandinavia as well. So I think the difference may be that here we have this sort of deeply rooted tradition of friluftsliv, and I'll get back to that in a minute. But I think if you ask just about anybody over the age of, I don't know, 30 or 40 maybe, in North America or Sweden, I think we'll have pretty similar memories of childhood as far as there are certain reasons why we tend to remember playing outside. Like if you ask a random group of people, what to tell you about, tell me about a really like a memory that stands out from your childhood, chances are they're going to tell you something that occurred outside. And I think we have these fond memories because there are certain parts of our brains that just get activated when we're outside. All of our senses are activated, and there's actually research confirming that that's why we tend to remember things more, and in a positive way of being outside. So that's pretty universal. I've talked to a lot of Americans who sort of share the same sort of memories of running around the neighborhood, and just staying out till the street lights came on, and or mom called you in for dinner, and so forth. And then I think in North America things have really sort of changed in the past few decades. And not that things haven't changed over here, obviously, like I mentioned with the electronics, but we do have this tradition of friluftsliv, which I think has really helped us sort of retain that nature, that really deep nature connection, even throughout this digital era. For over here, nature is really seen as the key to a good childhood. It's really seen as essential, and I think it's because it goes back a long time. Friluftsliv, the term, which means loosely translated open air life or free air life. It was coined almost 200 years ago, actually. And it just refers to this sort of simple connection with nature. And it actually started out as a reaction against urbanization and civilization. It was a critique of society, the way things were going, and industrialism. So it was a way to get outside, get out in nature, and just sort of enjoy the simple things in life.
Right.
And so this is this is a tradition that's passed on from generation to generation. So that's a big difference, I think. And another big difference is that we have the freedom to roam over here. It's pretty unique. I didn't realize how unique it is until I moved to the States, and I realized I couldn't all of a sudden walk on private property, because that was considered trespassing. Over here, we actually have the right to hike and bike and even ride horses, camp out, make up fire, do all kinds of outdoor recreation on privately owned land, which I know probably sounds crazy, but it works really well with people respecting the rules. The only rule pretty much is to not destroy anything. So take care of nature. And so that, those are two big things that make it easy for us to connect with nature. So that was, those were some of the differences that I encountered once I started raising my own children in the U.S. But there are other differences as well. Having children in the U.S. was really a game changer for me. I realized how different their childhoods were going to be compared to mine. And I think part of it was just the attitude towards play as well. In Sweden, a lot of the play is self-directed. Also at preschools, there's no, I'm not going to say there's no pressure to sort of to have a lot of academic instruction. All the teaching is play-based, and there's not this sort of pressure to prepare the kids for the next phase. And there's also a lot of emphasis put on risky play and messy play. So basically, the kids are outside playing in the mud a lot. And that's also what the parents' expectations are. So that was really different for my kids compared to, what my friends' kids were doing over here in Sweden. Basically, my kids, and also this whole idea of outdoor play, whereas in Sweden, kids are actually entitled to outdoor play in preschool. It's in the national curriculum for the preschool. Whereas in the US, I found that a lot of preschools and schools were afraid to let the kids out in the winter at all. So basically, whereas in Sweden, unless it's thundering and lightning, the kids are always outside for recess, and weather is not really an excuse. So that's where the title for my book comes from. It's an old Scandinavian saying, there's no such thing as bad weather, only bad clothing. And so in the US, my kids were like complaining that they never got to go outside for recess in the winter. And whereas in Sweden, the kids are like begging to come inside because the teachers, make them go out every day, regardless of the weather. So a little different. And I had, also I had a lot of parents and teachers sort of, talk to me about messy play, and I found that there was like a big aversion towards kids getting dirty and messy. Whereas to me, that I felt like that was an important part of, their development and being able to explore their surroundings. And yeah, getting dirty. Because in Sweden that's kind of normal, but in the U.S. that was kind of frowned upon, I found. But I had some of my kids' friends' parents who, I specifically had to tell them, make sure to bring outdoor clothes, because, if the kids are at my house, they're going to be outside getting muddy. And fortunately, they were pretty good sports about it. They're like, okay, I don't like going out in the woods, but here's some rain boots. Knock yourself out. Like, I love my, it's fine if my kid is out there. I just don't do woods myself. So
that's so interesting, Linda, because I think about you brought up so many points around some of the key issues that some of us face around in probably North America, just around liability. So I think a lot of times, for example, my husband and I were walking a country road the other week, and we were coveting the farmland beside us, wanting to actually go on and explore it as we walked. But of course, it's private property, so we can't do that here. And I think that is because we're very much risk aversive here, just even around some of the risky play that you talk about. And I think that we're slowly starting to turn our thinking about school readiness here. We did have a many number of years that it was very much a regimented kind of learning curriculum where it was teacher led. And now I think in the last maybe 5 or 6 years, we have slowly begun to look at more of a regio approach. And I'm just thinking about the whole messy play, and we have similar climates as far as we get really cold winters and ice and all of those kinds of things. And one of the things that educators have echoed to us when we've done workshops is that parents really get sometimes frustrated and angry at educators when they take their children out in wet weather or cold weather. And so I'm just, and a lot of times children aren't coming prepared for the weather. So I'm just wondering if you have any ideas how we could kind of bring along hesitant parents with us. What kind of messages would be supportive to help them understand the importance of this kind of messy, unstructured outdoor play?
Right. I know I encountered exactly the same thing. I was probably the only parent. No, I wasn't the only parent, but I was one of just a few parents who was complaining about the kids not getting outside for recess. And the school had a lot more parents calling in if the kids were outside, and there was even, a rain cloud in the sky. So, so they were in a tough spot too. Trying to please all the parents with their different ideas of when
Yes.
kids should be outside and not. So so it's not easy for schools. And like you said, a common problem is that kids don't come prepared. I saw it firsthand as well. And I think that's just a result of outdoor play. I think it's kind of a catch-22. So the kids don't, the parents don't expect the kids to go outside for recess. And so they don't, dress the kids for it. So they don't come prepared. And because the kids don't come prepared, well, the school can't send them out, right? Mm-hmm. So I think in Sweden, what happens here is that the school makes the expectations very clear from the start of the school year. And here it's so, that's the norm everywhere. So all parents, know what the deal is from when you start sending your kid to preschool. That's how it is. So, but, I think it's very important for the schools to be clear about, what gear do the kids need? Right. At what in what weather conditions will they go outside, and in what conditions will they not go outside, but make it clear that, the kids are expected to play outside unless the conditions are hazardous. And and also to let the school, let the parents know that if they have I mean, because obviously there are parents who have, who are in financial straits, or have trouble maybe buying the kind of gear that they need for their kids to play comfortably outside in cold weather. And, then to try and work with the parents to find solutions for that. Like at my kids' school, they did a coat drive every year. The school would purchase extra gloves and hats for the kids who needed it. They still didn't send the kids out much in the winter, but at least, the effort was there. So you got to try and think of things like that. And then I think is also just a matter of educating the parents. I think a lot of it is about helping them overcome this fear, the fear of inclement weather, and just, I think the research sort of speaks for itself. There are a lot of misconceptions about, people think that if you go outside in the cold, you're going to catch a cold, and we know those are, wide tales, and same with, don't go outside with your with your hair wet and you're going to get a cold, and that's, it's just not true. You're probably going to be a bit cold, better wear a hat, but there are a lot of misconceptions. So, and that's why part of the reason why a big reason why I wrote my book, because I wanted a book that didn't just tell my story, but also shared a lot of the research, because there's a lot of research on this that's been done just in the past 10 or 20 years. And, I wanted it to be fact-based so that I could put it in the hands of people who were, on the fence about it, and for it to be in a sort of accessible way. So.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's really important to get that buy-in from the parents by really highlighting the benefits, the physical, mental, cognitive, social benefits. And there's, like I said, there's so much research to back that up now. So.
Yes, thank you. I think about the whole idea about making your expectations clear. And I remember seeing a U.S. presenter, Teacher Tom. I don't know if you've ever heard of Teacher Tom.
Yeah, I follow his blog. He's great.
Oh, he's incredible. And he talks about when parents come for an interview, he talks about the fact that they're going to be outside, they're going to be engaging in risky play, and they're going to come home dirty. They might have holes in their clothes, and they may hurt themselves here and there, and that's all part of the learning. So that's kind of, that expectation is put up front before a parent even registers. And I'm seeing some great things happen here as well around some programs purchasing like rain suits for children that stay at the program so that they're able to go out in, all kinds of weather.
Right. There are some preschools. Some preschools that have even partnered with businesses to help. So that's, so that sponsorship might be one way to go about equipping the kids as well.
Right, that's a great strategy. And you were just talking about the myths around how children get sick, which was interesting because I had been thinking about how with COVID-19, we're kind of living in really uncertain times. And I've been thinking about when we return back to childcare, when we return back to school, what's our new normal going to look like? So currently, for example, with the emergency childcare, our adult-child ratios are lower than what they would typically be. And there was a passage in your book that made me think about this, which refers to what you were just talking about. And it says, The idea that fresh air and outdoor play are crucial to good health is so prevalent that it has even found some unlikely champions in the pharmaceutical industry. Kronen's Apotek, did I pronounce that right?
Apotek, yeah.
Thank you. One of the largest pharmacy chains in Sweden offers the following advice for flu season on its website. The first step towards fewer runny noses and less coughing is to let the child spend as much time outside as possible. When children are outside, the physical distance between them increases, which reduces the risk for contagion through direct contact of the air. The more time spent outside, the better. I thought that was really interesting, and I'm thinking about how we can think about that as we look at our new normal moving forward.
Right. I think these are really uncertain times, and obviously I don't think anybody knows what our new normal is going to look like. I know that outdoor play and forest schools, where children play outside for the better part of the day, which originated here in Scandinavia, they really had a lot of momentum before the pandemic broke out. They had increased, I don't know exactly in Canada what it looked like, but in the US they had increased a lot just in the past few years. So I really hope that this pandemic is not going to change that. I hope we won't lose that momentum because regardless of what you think of the restrictions, and I don't want to get into that, I know that's, people have a lot of strong feelings about that. Sweden has taken a different path. We only have recommendations from our government. We're not on lockdown or there are some restrictions. You can't gather more than 50 people and so forth, but schools have remained open, preschools have remained open, and so forth. And I think part of that is because in our culture is so, this whole idea of going outside, it's strong, and also because regardless of, like I said, what you think of the restrictions or absence of restrictions, what we do know is what you just said from that passage, that contagion happens a lot easier in small confined spaces, like a preschool, perfect breeding ground for germs. And that's why everybody gets, the stomach flu, it just spreads so easily, like at preschools and schools, subways, bars, anytime you have people packed together. And that's why we have these social distancing measures now, because that's pure science there. Germs don't spread as easily when you're outside and apart. So, and we've seen it at the forest schools here in Sweden too, where they actually have the kids at forest schools have fewer sick days. So forest schools have actually become a lot more popular here as well. And this health aspect, I think, is one of the reasons why they are so popular. So as moving forward after this pandemic, maybe that will be an aspect that people will start looking at. But I haven't heard that discussion about contagion or outside versus being on lockdown. I don't know how much that's being discussed in North America right now. But I do think that another consequence that we may or may not see is that I think at least some people have discovered some joy in the slowdown as well. I think a lot of people have been very scheduled, and a lot of kids have maybe been like overscheduled, had a lot of activities after school. And a lot of preschool kids maybe have been enrolled in a lot of activities. And I think at least some families I know have expressed that, at least the flip side of this, in all this hardship, has been maybe rediscovering the joys of maybe like a slower lifestyle and more time to connect with family. And maybe that will also translate into more time to play outside, unstructured for kids in the future. I don't know, but we can hope so.
And it's definitely what the research is telling us, isn't it? That unstructured outdoor play is important, and just all of. I love how your book goes through the parenting tips. I love how at the end of each chapter it gives you additional resources on the topic, and it does go through all of the current research. And I was excited actually to see one of my favorite authors, Carl Honoré, who's written a book called In Praise of Slow, and has also written a parenting book. Because I think you're right. I think that sometimes we can look for the silver lining in this situation and look at what are the opportunities here for children and families moving forward. The other thing I think about is, so through your book, you talk about all the different research about the importance of outdoor play and the benefits. And I think that when we want to make change in our culture, there's lots of different layers in the onion we need to peel. And there's kind of that individual layer around our individual experience. So one of my concerns is if younger parents or children today aren't having experiences in nature and developing that kind of love and caring for nature, then how do they then bring that forward in society? But I also look at kind of the whole village picture around our families and the children. So how can we advocate with families about the importance of outdoor play and the benefits? And then the final layer, which I think is a really hard layer, is the whole policy piece. And in our world, we have lots of different policy ministries that we need to work with. One being the Ministry of Education, our local public health, fire departments, and they all have their own regulations. And some of those regulations we don't feel have caught up with the research that is happening. And just an example, this is always a bee in my bonnet, and people that have heard me talk before will giggle because I'm always talking about this. But in the Early Learning and Childcare Act, what they've allotted for children on the playground is 60 square feet, which is 10 by 6 feet. So for each child, 10 by 6 feet. And I call that the dog pens for children. So I'm just curious from your experience, because I know you talked in your book about your advocacy experiences. Can you give us any kind of lessons learned from that around how we can go about making change and advocating?
Sure. Obviously, the easiest level to start at is the individual level, because you can always, even if you can't affect change, if you can't change the policy, you can at least change what you do and in your family. So just start by being a good role model and try to get outside every day and sort of make it a priority, make it a routine and part of your sort of family rhythm. I try to work in nature time in sort of errands. I try to doing everyday things. Like sometimes instead of regular dinner, we just pack up a picnic and head to a park, or just sit outside in the yard. If you have a backyard, obviously that's a great way to use that. And can you take the bike instead of driving, and just sort of try to evaluate all those little things you can do in your everyday life to get outside more. And also, I think it's important to think about how we talk about the weather. I think little kids don't have these prejudices about the weather as us adults do. So we talk about, it's raining outside and let's stay in instead. Like kids love jumping in puddles and playing with the water and catching raindrops with their tongues. And So to try and sort of keep that excitement and encourage it, and try to, be outside regardless of the weather. I think it also helps kids build resilience, and they also understand that it's a normal part of life to be outside, even when the weather isn't perfect. So I think that's important. And if you, as a parent, if you're really busy and try to see if there are other family members who can be an essential part of a child's, or getting the child out. A lot of times, I had my grandparents growing up. They took me to a lot of different parks, and just being out, they took me outside a lot, because they just had more time to do it than my parents, who were working full time and so forth. So try and sort of identify people in your children's lives that can help and support that effort. And then, of course, on the community level or family level, outdoor play is a lot more fun with friends. I hear that from a lot of people. And that's why outdoor play, I think, also works so well at preschools, because you get that sort of group dynamic going on. And the kids, they develop all sorts of intricate games and make up their own rules. And I think it's always a lot easier to get kids on board if you have other kids join them. And there are a lot of examples, like creative examples of what you can do to sort of facilitate and support outdoor play. I have a friend who's Norwegian but who lives in Toronto, and she missed the outdoor play from her, from growing up in Norway. So she decided to start advocating for creating like an ice skating rink in the neighborhood, and now it's like a great gathering place for all kinds of families in the wintertime. And another friend of mine, she just decided to make her front yard really play friendly. So they just basically invited all the neighborhood kids over and invited them to play in their front yard, so that they try to foster this sort of culture of outdoor play, at least on their street, so you can make a big impact in your just in your neighborhood, and hopefully that will sort of spread like rings on the water. And when I lived in Indiana, I helped, I was part of a group that we decided to remodel this rundown playground in town that none of the kids played at, because the equipment was so old it was actually dangerous. And we decided to raise money, and we partnered with a lot of the local businesses and other nonprofits, and together, we raised the money and got it built, and it actually, it opened last year. And so there are a lot of things you can do locally, and also just sort of check your community and see, what kind of nature areas are there that may be available. Even if you don't have the freedom to roam, as we do here, there could be nature areas that are not sort of your public parks, but could still be an option. Maybe you could ask the landowner for permission, or maybe it is, possible to recreate on some pieces of land that aren't as manicured as a park, but could very well be a good place for kids to play. And there are a lot of online networks too, where you can meet like-minded people. There are lots of organizations like Hike It Baby. There are lots of resources for preschool teachers who are interested in teaching this way. I usually recommend that people check out the Children in Nature Network. They are probably the organization that has the most information about this in North America. And they have both, the research to back up everything, and they have a lot of practical guides, that are geared specifically towards preschool teachers and parents and people who want to start nature play groups in their neighborhoods and so forth. So there's definitely a lot of good information out there. And then, of course, the third level that you mentioned, the policy makers. I think that's, as you also so noted, it's the level, because it's the farthest away, it's the hardest to influence. And I found it just with not even like on that level, but just institutions like schools and preschools. I found that they can be very hard. It can be very hard to to break through that sort of bureaucracy there as well. But I figured that by at least advocating for these ideas, I had a constant dialogue with my kids' preschool teachers and administration. I gave them copies of my book because I felt like, at least it's something, maybe they will read it and take away something from it. I think if you can find at least one person in an organization that is on board with these ideas, that can go a long way. You want to network with that person, and maybe, like I said, maybe with Rings on the Water, you can get others on board as well. Maybe you can bring in a speaker or and invite policymakers to come as well. You can maybe visit other schools where they do a lot of outdoor learning. There are starting to be more and more such sort of real life examples, and there's no reason to reinvent the wheel, really. There's a lot of good operations out there already. And just sort of think outside the box. If you can't change, you gotta maybe start with baby steps, like maybe just sort of maybe contact I try to get our parent teacher organization to get involved with a garden at our school. I did not get the response I wanted, but sometimes you just gotta keep trying. And there are a lot of good examples of people who have been successful, and there are teachers who are really sort of making the most with what they have. There's a British preschool teacher, Kieran Kaur. She has a pretty big blog called Learning for Life, and it's pretty amazing. You were talking about how small the schoolyards are sometimes, and she doesn't have a lot of space in her preschool, but they've really made the most of it. There are so many different cool things going on there. And they got little willow trees growing, and they cook out there. They have all sorts of neat things. So if you have a chance, check that out. And there's
spell her name. Sorry.
Kieran Kaur, Kierna, and then Kaur is Corr.
Thank you.
Yeah. And so
sorry.
Yeah, no, just one last example. There's a kindergarten teacher out on the East Coast of the US who started Forest Fridays. Oh. And that was one way, she wanted more outdoor learning for her students. And so she found this, her principal was supportive of the idea. So the principal let her take the kindergartners out once a week. And so they call it Forest Fridays. And so even if she couldn't get, the kids to go outside and learn every day, at least once a week. They now have that as a routine, and that initiative has spread to a lot of other schools as well. So there are definitely ways to advocate for and get these ideas out there.
Thank you, Linda. It's true what you're saying around the fact that sometimes to make change, it really is baby steps. And sometimes when you're passionate about something, you just want to plow ahead. But not everybody's at the same place in their learning and their journey. So sometimes it is just about doing those baby steps and advocating and kind of finding those champions in the community. I would agree with that. I do feel encouraged. We do have some forest schools here in Canada. We actually have one in our area too, which is a Timber Nook one. Yeah, and one of the participants today works in a forest school near Ottawa. And even I've been seeing some great gains. I know that the EarlyON, somebody from the EarlyON near Belleville is on this conversation today, and they have a really nice partnership with their conservation area where they take walks through a path through a forest around a pond with their families, and then the conservation area has allowed them to use a hut to keep some supplies and materials in it. And our own EarlyONs here are doing outdoor activities with families as well. And we do have a play group that meets once a week at our environment center called Forest Friday. So we are feeling encouraged.
Yeah.
and certainly books like the one you have written really give some great information. And I'm wondering, I want to ask my partner Ellen here if we've had any questions on the chat so far.
Hi, no specific questions so far.
Okay, should we open it up now? And if anybody wants to ask a question, they could do that now.
I could mention while we're sort of waiting that because I was thinking about when you're not used to being outside a lot with children in a preschool setting, one of the best things you can do, I think, to get excited about going outside and get the kids out, excited about being outside as well, is I think to be like really well prepared. I think it's important that, if you're going to go to a nature area that is not by the preschool, for example, I think it's really important to have all the practical stuff worked out ahead of time, that you make sure that you've thought about all all the situations that might arise, like, okay, so what's the bathroom situation like how, what do we do about food? How do we handle food outside? Like, is there shelter in case, we run into like really foul weather? What happens if somebody gets wet or hurt or, so once you have all that kind of stuff figured out, then it's easier to focus on just having fun. And,
right.
And also to feel confident that you don't always have to have like a rigid. The point of friluftsliv and outdoor play at forest schools is not to have this sort of rigid agenda. It's more about letting the kids learn through self-discovery, and the teachers are more like facilitators and sort of co-discoverers. I know at forest schools, the teachers tend to ask more questions than what they don't typically provide the answers. They like to ask questions because they want the kids to think for themselves and to sort of really hone in on those critical thinking skills.
Right.
So yeah. But then, of course, you can have some activities, games, and things like that. Definitely have them as backup if the kids are restless or not finding things to do, absolutely. But there doesn't have to be like this rigid schedule.
Right. It's really about them exploring nature and not even the materials that you put out there, but nature itself. Linda, I see that we do have one question, and it kind of goes back to your beginning of your book around, my question is how to bring this into the winter months. I struggle with that. I work with preschoolers who don't nap.
Right. So to get them outside when it's cold. Right. Yeah, so the clothing is definitely key. If the kids' basic needs aren't met, they're not going to have fun outside. So it's key it's key that they've gone to the bathroom and that they've eaten and that they do have warm clothes to get them outside. And little kids sometimes struggle with all the clothing. It's a little harder for them to move around. So with the youngest kids, it may be better to sort of keep shorter, to keep the outdoor sessions a little shorter and just maybe go out a little more frequently instead. I mean, in general, once the children get used to being outside, it's not so much of an issue in my experience, because like at the preschools here, it becomes a routine. The kids know that all the kids go outside, so it's not really an issue once they are, once they get it into a routine. And also I want to mention, it's really important for the educators to be well dressed as well. And because sometimes we forget, we're busy bundling up all the kids, but then we don't think about ourselves. And I get cold real easily. And people when I lived in the US, they thought I loved the cold because they always saw me outside playing with the kids in the winter, but I don't really like the cold at all. But I was wearing like 3 or 4 layers and brought hot chocolate. So that's another thing. You can bring a special treat out. Maybe if you can have a fire, that definitely helps, keeping kids warm. Plus kids love fires. Just got to be a little careful with the little kids. But, making it a little special like that, bringing out maybe a hot chocolate, maybe that's a special treat that they just have when you're outside, for example. So they come to associate outdoor time with this sort of little special treat. So those are just, just a few little things that you can do.
Okay, thank you, Linda. I'm just sorry, I'm trying to read the chat and the questions here. Somebody did say, what can I do if my kids still don't want to go out or stay in the cold? And I think that kind of really does go back to the whole conversation about what you wear, and also kind of your attitude as an educator around programming.
Yeah, and if you're a parent, it's a little different situation, whether when you're a parent at home or if you're at preschool. But I mean, obviously, I've faced this as well with my kids not wanting to go outside. So then I just usually give them a choice. Well, I try to think of, okay, what they usually like to do, and I say, well, do you want to do this or that? So those are the choices, and because they know that we're going to go outside regardless. It's just,
right.
For me, it's always been like, well, it's like brushing your teeth at night. It's just something we do. And it's been the same with outdoor play for me and my kids. It's just something that we do every day. It's not typically a choice, if you will. So,
well, and I love that, because you're saying this is the expectation, but here are some choices within that expectation as well.
Right. And then once we are outside, 9 times out of 10, I've noticed that with a lot of kids, the hardest part is getting out the door. And then once you're out, they'll typically, they'll find something to do. And yeah.
I see a question here. It says, you mentioned for programs and educators to make it an expectation with families that their children will be going outside. Do you have any specific suggestions for how they can set this expectations, but just besides just having the odd conversation, for example, parent handbook changes, etc.?
Yeah, I would send, yeah, I don't think just talking to the parents is enough. I think having, like in the US, we would always get a supply list with the materials that parents were supposed to bring in. I mean, something like that, where with here in Sweden, you get a supply list, but there's not crayons and things like that on. It's, it lists what type of clothes the kid will need specifically. So rain boots and coveralls, winter boots, and whatever it is that fits the climate where you live.
That's a great suggestion. And I can't believe that we're like just a couple of minutes to 1 o'clock. That hour flew by. I want to just point out for people that on the meeting chat, people have put lots of resources of different programs that you can check out. So please, before you leave, take a look at that and jot down anything that might interest you. And before I do the book draw, I just really want to thank you again, Linda. You gave us lots of food for thought about our role with children around the outdoors, but also our role with families and how we can start with ourselves and move outward in trying to be champions for outdoor play. And I really want to thank you because Linda volunteered and donated her time today. So thank you so much for that, Linda. We really appreciate it. And we're fortunate to have had that opportunity. And again, thank you, Nancy, for going to bat for us. Thank you.
Thank you as well. And I do want to mention it is hard to sort of, there's so much, so much to talk about. And it's hard to cram it all into an hour. But if anybody wants to contact me, just, yeah, you can find me through my blog, as you mentioned, rainorShineMama.com, or look me up on Facebook or Instagram, where you can also follow me and my daughters on a more personal level, and see, what we're up to over here in Sweden. So
thank you so much. Before we leave today, though, I wanted to announce the lucky names of the draw for Linda's book, There's No Such Thing as Bad Weather. I think you can see it here in the frame. So again, if you can, Ellen will type in my email address again, and you can send me your mailing address so we can get these books to you. And thanks to the old Millbrook family EarlyON for donating them. So the names are Kira Schneider, Melissa Limon, Karen Teagle, Melanie Wynn, Kelly McNeely, Kelly Lewis, Jennifer Kuhn, Brenda DeMarsh, Wendy Bestward, and Crystal Lott. So thank you again, everybody, for joining us today. Stay safe and good luck in your advocacy and your adventures in the outdoors. And thank you, Linda.
Thank you.